This video is the second part of a 2-video set, looking at Act 2, Scene 2, and we're picking up at the top of page 59 in the Heinemann Educational Books edition. If you remember, we've just had an episode of high drama and tension, featuring a confrontation between Stanhope and Hibbert, as Hibbert attempts to leave and Stanhope successfully prevents him. Peace has finally been restored to the dugout, as Stanhope is once more alone. He takes a drink and sits down at the table to write. Mason comes in and asks Stanhope if he would like a nice cup of tea. Note how Sherriff once more uses an episode of mundane domesticity to contrast with the high drama of the preceding pages, as Stanhope challenges Mason's use of the adjective nice, which is inherently meaningless and is just being used by Mason in a formulaic manner in this context to indicate his solicitousness, by asking him if he can guarantee that it will be so. The humour of the tea and the onion soup being cooked in the same pot, which Mason has been unable to clean satisfactorily, effectively making them one and the same, provides a moment of light relief, as Mason reveals that they're just called different things depending on the time of day. In other words, it's onion soup with tea leaves in it. Not till dinner time, sir. As Mason goes to exit, he meets Osborne on his way in. Note how he asks Osborne the exact same question that he asks Stanhope, but gets a completely different response, with no hint of sarcasm in Osborne's tone. "Will you have a nice cup of tea, sir?" "Please, Mason, and plenty of bread and butter and strawberry jam." Osborne has been on duty, and he reports to Stanhope that there is, apart from 2 lonely rifle grenades just over the front line to the left, otherwise nothing doing. It's a period of calm before the storm, as Stanhope tells him that the Colonel has given them orders to make a raid. Osborne's total and calm acceptance of the news that he's been selected to go on the raid with Raleigh is totally different to Hibbert's hysterical attitude to fighting in the upcoming attack. Note how his speeches at this point mostly comprise questions about the raid as he seeks information rather than giving opinions. The way in which he asks, "Why Raleigh?" rather than "Why me?" is testament to his mature and level-headed character. Osborne then switches the conversation to practical matters, asking Stanhope where they will make the raid from. They get the map out and Stanhope explains, "Here we are, look. Straight across to this sentry post of the Boche. 60 yards. Tonight we'll lay out a guiding tape as far as possible. After dark, the TOC Emmers are going to break the Boche wire and will cut a passage in ours." The term TOC Emmers was signallers' code for the letters T and M and stood for trench mortars. A mortar was a simple, lightweight and portable, muzzle-loaded weapon for firing shells, and it is these that they're intending to use to breach the German defences in order to create holes in the wire for the men to crawl through. They conclude their planning by sorting out who is to accompany Osborne and Raleigh. Osborne asks if he can take Corporal Crooks, to which Stanhope agrees, and Stanhope then says that he will ask for volunteers to fill the remaining 9 spots. Mason returns with the tea. Note how quickly the talk switches from the logistics of how the raid will be carried out to the logistics of how the bread, butter and jam are to be served, and suggests the way in which the men had to compartmentalise things and focus on the trivial in order to keep going. "Will you have cut bread and butter, or shall I bring the loaf, sir?" "Cut it, Mason, please." "Just bringing the jam separately?" "Yes." Trotter enters from the sleeping dugout looking very sleepy and complaining that he feels frowsy, which means dishevelled or untidy, although he probably means it more relating to his mental state than his physical appearance. There's another moment of dark humour as the arrival of the strawberry jam prompts Trotter to recite a short but grim verse which likens the strawberry jam to a bloodied corpse, "Tell me, mother, what is that looks like strawberry jam?" "Hush, hush, my dear, 'tis only Pa, run over by a tram." Not only does this say a lot about Trotter's rather basic sense of humour, but Sherriff is also setting this up so that he and Osborne can be compared later on in the scene, when Osborne reads out a piece of verse that he appreciates. Osborne communicates his distaste at the rhyme by cutting him short to inform him of the raid. Trotter is naturally quick to question Osborne in order to ascertain that he is not to be of the party. As soon as he finds out that he is not included, he relaxes, saying, "Let's hear all about it." Trotter can't help himself as he tactlessly remarks on how he reckons the Boche are all ready and waiting for it, and he regales Osborne with a little anecdote about a raid just south of here the other night, where the trench mortars go and knock an hole in the Boche wire to let our fellas through, and in the night the Boche went out and tied bits of red rag on each side of the hole, seemingly to taunt the British that they were aware of what they were up to and that the British were now sitting ducks. He seems either oblivious of or insensitive to the implications that this tale has for Osborne. Mason enters and Trotter confronts him about the oniony tea, but Mason once more effectively shuts him down by telling him that he'll look into it, sir, which he clearly has no intent to do. Trotter returns to the subject of the raid. Note the way in which he says, "joking apart," seemingly completely unaware that he is the only one who found his anecdote remotely amusing. It's damn ridiculous making a raid when the Boche are expecting it. Osborne, clearly irritated by Trotter's insensitivity, shuts him down. "We're not doing it for fun," and warns him not to speak to Raleigh about the raid in the same way as he has done to him. "You might avoid talking to Raleigh about it. There's no need to tell him it's murder." Trotter asks Osborne what he's reading. When Osborne shows him the cover, his astonishment is obvious. "Alice's Adventures in Wonderland? Why, that's a kid's book." He's even more puzzled when Osborne reads him a section of nonsense verse from it. "How doth the little crocodile improve his shining tail, and pour the waters of the Nile on every golden scale? How cheerfully he seems to grin and neatly spread his claws, and welcomes little fishes in with gently smiling jaws." This is interesting as it differentiates Osborne and Trotter even more with regard to how they choose to deal with the situation in which they find themselves, and demonstrates the friction that is between the pair, but which is kept under the surface. Note how we've already had Trotter reciting a childish rhyme, one that is grim and makes fun of death by trivialising it, from which he gets a pleasure that Osborne clearly does not appreciate. When Osborne reciprocates by reading out a piece of verse from the book he is reading, Trotter demonstrates that he does not understand that the point of nonsense verse is that it has no point, and that the pleasure comes from the absurdity of the images and the subject matter. Both think that the other has childish tastes. Trotter, after a moment's thought, "I don't see no point in that." Osborne, wearily, "Exactly, that's just the point." We can speculate that Osborne may be drawn to nonsense verse because he wants to escape from the absurdity of his actual existence, rather than trivialising it like Trotter. Note also, though, how the verse foreshadows Osborne's death, and those of the men he takes with him on the raid, as they too will be welcomed in like little fishes with the gently smiling jaws of the holes in the barbed wire. Stanhope returns, come to fetch Hibbert so they can go on duty together, as has been arranged earlier in the scene. Osborne tries to get Stanhope to rest, but he refuses, once more demonstrating his conscientiousness as he tries to protect the men as much as he can. There's too much to do. This raid's going to upset the arrangements of the wiring party tonight. Can't have men out there while the Toc Emmers are blowing holes in the Boche wire. Stanhope and Hibbert leave to go on duty. Trotter tries to draw Osborne into a conversation about Hibbert, remarking, "Do you see his eyes? All red. He told me in there he'd got hay fever." But Osborne won't be drawn. Osborne clearly finds it distasteful to gossip about the other men, and he gives the excuse that he wants to write a letter, presumably to his wife, to let her know that he might not come back after the raid. As usual, Trotter appears completely tone-deaf to the situation as he remarks that he too will write a letter to my old lady because she's wrote and asked if I've got fleas. Raleigh comes in excitedly, his naive enthusiasm once more bubbling over. He's just been told about the raid by Stanhope and that he's going to be involved. I say, it's most frightfully exciting, especially when he finds out that he and Osborne have been picked specially. The curtain falls. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques and English literature texts.